Gaurav Luthra from Dehradun. He'll be talking about the IOL power calculations and getting it right.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Maipal sir, Dr. Namrata, and thank you so much for inviting me for sharing this, passion of mine. I'll quickly share my screen. So, okay. So I'll be speaking on biometric considerations in achieving refractive predictability in premium IOLs, and I have no financial interest. And as we are all aware that patients' expectations have grown, and we have now the era of the refractive cataract surgery, as we have seen over the last two lectures as well. And excellent outcomes with laser refractive surgery have raised the bar for cataract surgeons as well. And hard selling of freedom from glasses or throwaway of spectacles by our refractive fraternity may be another reason. So in fact, and it's not unfounded, everybody would love to be free of glasses if they can, and if they can get a quality outcome. So there is no question left on that as well. And success with premium IOLs, it largely depends upon near perfect refractive outcomes. And residual refractive error is the primary cause for a dissatisfied premium IOL patient. So I think before we start looking at lots of other things, it would be important that we ensure that we have a great refractive result, and that's what my talk is all about. So precise and predictable preoperative measurements and accurate biometry are the key to achieving near emmetropia and a satisfied patient. Of course, there's much more to it than just biometry, but I think this is the key to success as well. Measurements for premium IOLs can be dependent on multiple factors. So precise preoperative measurements, a role of advanced technologies to help the clinician do better and beyond biometry, and understanding the importance lays the foundation of a successful premium IOL practice. So I think a premium IOL practice requires working on, and it does not come automatically, and you have to really work at it, because a high-powered lens that is only 0.1 millimeter forward in the capsular bag can cause almost a 1 diopter refractive error. So the scope for error is very small, and satisfied patients will bring to satisfied other potential patients as well. So when it comes to diagnostic instruments, when you're dealing with a patient for biometry, you could be looking at many things today, right from a corneal topographer to optical or immersion biometry, manual keratometries to an OCT to look at the fovea. If you're looking for a premium IOL patient, you could be doing tomography in certain cases. And today, actually, a tear film assessment also becomes really important. So the considerations for premium IOL patients are many. K readings from multiple instruments. I'll talk about it just now. Check if there are inconsistencies due to the poor ocular surface, as I just mentioned before. A good patient history and the profession of the patient is very, very important. So when we do a biometry and when we first meet the patient, I always spend 1 minute talking to the patient about what he does and what he's looking for, what kind of glasses he uses, what are his hobbies. I think that is very important in addition to biometry, for you to decide what kind of IOL to choose, what kind of post-refractive outcome to choose as well. We would love to exclude patients with unrealistic expectations, but I think the number of patients that you exclude has gone down drastically with improvements in technology and our understanding. And of course, the patient should understand the potential possibilities of side effects. It's always good to mention about possibility of occasional glare and halos, which I always do to the patient. Also good to tell them that we are not going to be 100% sure that you're going to be completely free of glasses. I always mention to them that you'll be mostly free of glasses. You may have to use some glasses for occasional things like fine print reading or when driving, so that builds up the right expectations for the patient. Today, it's very important to also ask for previous history of any refractive surgery. You'll be surprised there are so many patients who actually have undergone refractive surgery, and you could miss some of them with a small correction which was done, and you could be sitting with a refractive surprise. So biometry has come a long way from the time we used to use the Javel shots or the Bausch and Lomb keratometers and the ultrasounds, which evolved a lot, but then we came to the optical biometries, which came in almost 10-15 years back. And today we've come to a stage where optical biometries have become tremendously better than what we were even 5 years back. So prerequisites for a good biometry, a good keratometry, which includes both the magnitude of astigmatism and the axis, because today we do a lot of torics, the axial length, the AC depth, the lens thickness, and the effective lens position. Now, the good thing is all these can be done by an optical biometer very nicely and in one shot. And as Dr. Ramamurthy said, while it is not essential to have an optical biometer, but it's highly recommended definitely to have one. But let that not stop you from going on to trifocal lenses. So we've come a long way from what we did with keratometries. Coming to the ocular surface, I think a good look at the slit lamp is very important, and some centers actually do a default tear film analysis and ocular surface analysis, but that's not absolutely necessary. But a good clinical exam is definitely important to make sure that you get a perfect biometry as well. And then also, it's always great to do the biometry as on a virgin eye without installation of any drops, without using the non-contact tonometer. Otherwise, you can have problems. So with the old biometers, as you can see, we used to have measurements done, and we would be very good with power difference or the magnitude of astigmatism. But these keratometers are not great when picking the steep meridian. If you're planning to do toric IOLs, you would have to be very, very meticulous if you're using a manual keratometer. But definitely for biometry, for getting the IOL power right, you still use these Ks definitely. For getting the axis right, I think there's nothing better than a Placido-based topography. It's not essential again, and much of the new optical biometers do a great job of getting the axis right as well. But when in doubt, it's always great to go back to a topographer and do a Placido topography. Keratometry could have many errors if you're not using a focused eyepiece, failure to calibrate, poor patient fixation, a dry eye or a poor ocular surface, and so many other things, and irregular cornea. Optical biometry, I think the key that for us, our premium IOL practice, it went up about 10 years back when we shifted to optical biometry. And whenever one can afford one, one should not think twice before switching. I do keep hearing lectures that, if you're doing great immersion, you don't need to go for optical. Now, if you can afford it, if your patients are ready to pay for it, there should be nothing to stop you from going for it as well. But doing an immersion is not something which you're doing wrong. If you can't afford to get one for your practice, one should not mind. We've come a long way from the IOL Master 500, which was set the benchmark initially, and then we started using the LensStar with more markers for the keratometry. And today, the IOL Master 700 sets again the gold standards. It has 3-zone keratometry, telecentric keratometries, has the new option which will come up soon of the Placido as well, or similar to Placido, they will be giving us some kind of derived Placido things, and then of course the total K. And that helps. So telecentric keratometry essentially means that when you move the machine backwards and forwards to focus, you can have the dots, moving away or far. So with the IOL Master 700, that takes care of that, which I don't think any of the others biometers do. I don't know how much difference it will make, whether it will make a drastic difference, but this is what the company would make us believe at least. And I'm sure it has some scientific basis to it. Then the total keratometry, which again has a lot of new advantages and proposed advantages as well, because it measures the posterior corneal surface, and that helps derive the total keratometry. And while most other devices would only choose the anterior cornea, which would not, and they use nomograms with all the formulas like the Barrett's Universal 2 and the Barrett's Toric calculator, where they use nomograms to assess, to incorporate the posterior corneal astigmatism. So total K is derived like this. I will not go into the details, but it helps in giving you values which can be replaced in most of the formulas except the Barrett's, because Barrett's already has a nomogram inbuilt into it. So you could use it with all these formulas here, and the Hoffer Q and all these, you can replace the total K into these as well, and it's compatible. Whereas if you're using the Barrett's suite, then of course, you would have the separate Barrett's total K universal and the Barrett's total K toric formulas for that. Now, when you're doing toric IOLs, and especially if you're doing trifocals, I think the threshold for switching to toric is very small for me. If I have even small astigmatisms, I will always do a calculation for my trifocals and see if they need a toric, because outcomes will not be great if you're leaving uncorrected astigmatism, or sometimes I will even do a femto LRI if there's very small astigmatism. So for preoperative corneal astigmatism in toric IOLs, the step one is to determine the orientation of the steep and the flat meridians and measure the power difference between these two meridians. So we should avoid the mindset that in toric IOL, what's needed is simply to get a set of Ks, and one has to actually put in a lot of thought into doing the keratometries and a lot of effort. So what should you do? I typically recommend that you usually would have 2 or 3 devices in your clinic which can do the keratometries, even if they are like an auto keratometer besides your optical biometer. So get readings from 2 or 3 different devices and make sure that you have consistency between these measurements for the axis as well as the magnitude. And if you're not getting consistency, then try to look for the reason why you don't have a consistency. If it's the poor ocular surface, or if there is something else, you can call the patient back once after improving the surface, and then that would still help in getting a good biometry. So don't rest till you have found out why a reading is not consistent. It could be a small pterygium, it could be a small corneal scar. So once you've done that, then you look for the triangle of agreement. I think this is very important, and I've taken this slide from Warren Hill, he typically recommends that for both the axis and the magnitude, you should have a primary device. So like for the axis of the steep meridian, you can have a primary instrument, which could be a Placido if you have one. Otherwise, it could be just your optical case. And then you can go on to have a secondary device and a tertiary device, which when you look for consistency, if all of them are showing you the same readings, for example, here 3 devices have been used. The primary device for us is obviously the Placido, but you can also use the IOLMaster, which is very, very accurate. And then you can use something from the Pentacam. And if all 3 are showing similar axes, for example, here it's the 83 here, 84 here, then you know you're relaxed, because you know that my axis is right. If you are using only one device and you got it wrong, you would go wrong completely and have a poor result. So it's always great to have 2 or 3 devices in your clinic which can help you come with this. Similarly, for the magnitude of astigmatism, you can have a primary device like the IOLMaster keratometry, and for support you could have something like an iTrace, or it could be so many other devices which you could use. You could have the Atlas, you could have a topographer, it could be your auto keratometer for that matter. But if they all look good, I use the Virion as well, so that would sometimes, you know, it helps, and so that gives you peace of mind that you have it right, and then you can go ahead with your toric calculations. Axial lens, of course, we've come a long way from the ultrasonic biometry, the contact methods. I used to use that in the early 2000s, and then shifted on to immersion for a few years, and then came to optical. Now, speaking about optical is a totally different topic, but what it does is it sets you free of, you know, it's more objective, and your operators can use it, even the immersion ones. But applanation, I think, is a total no-no today. If anybody is still doing applanation ultrasonic biometry, I think it's not acceptable. And immersion is easily available on all devices and works beautifully well, and can be trained to your technicians as well, and is almost as good as optical biometry. So for the axial length, there is no reason why we should still stick to a contact method. And yes, optical biometry is the gold standard, and you can see here why. For applanation, the scope of error is plus minus 0.24 millimeters. For immersion, it's plus minus 0.12 in the axial length, and an IOLMaster or Lenstra will only give you 0.01. So obviously, axial length measurements are the key to biometry, and when you go wrong with those, you can get a refractive surprise. So the new biometers which have come about, the IOLMaster 700 and a couple of others also as well, which have a swept source OCT scan, can do a great job, because they can penetrate very dense cataracts, and almost 99% of cataracts today can be penetrated. And they also have a fixation check, which you can see here, and that is basically for you know, the fovea, and it tells you whether you got the readings right. And if you didn't get it right, you could, you know, you have a good scan there. Also, you know, you can have standard deviations on your measurements, so it's more accurate and more repeatable measurements, and you can cross-check it. It takes multiple scans, and you can have differences in the scans stand out, and you can go repeat them. So it always is important to look at these scans. It's not great to always just look at the printout. If you can sit for 2 minutes on the machine and look at the scans, it usually helps a lot. Otherwise, at least look at these standard deviations over here. So the standard deviations will tell you if certain measurements are off significantly, and then you can have them repeated. Similarly, you know, here differences in axial length would be really small. Differences in Ks will be usually really small. Otherwise, you could go back and repeat these as well. The last frontier in biometry, at least, is the effective lens position, and almost all the new formulas, they typically do use this. And this was actually something which has brought the biometry to the next level, where almost plus minus 0.5 outcomes are seen in 90% of our surgery patients. Something which I also like to do as well, I'll spend two minutes on this, is the abrometry. This may not be available everyone, and it is not necessary to do this, but if you have access to it, it helps when planning premium IOLs and trifocal IOLs. It's great to see that the corneal aberrations are not significant, and it's only the lens aberrations which are there. So if you have this, you can always have a look at that, and then this becomes a good case for doing a premium IOL. And of course, if you have high corneal aberrations, as in this patient, you can see over there that there are significant corneal aberrations over here, and the trefoil and the coma. So then obviously this patient may not be a great patient for that. And then of course, you can always look at the angle alpha and the kappa. For premium IOLs, the angle alpha, it is suggested, should be less than 0.5. But there is still no definite thing on this, and many surgeons don't actually pay much attention to this. So angle alpha and kappa can be thought about. And then of course the toric planning. And then it's good to have a quick look. If you have a Placido in your clinic, then there's no reason why you should not do it for a premium IOL patient. Sometimes you'll have a inferior steepening, you may have a formicrystic keratoconus or an irregular cornea, and then you may be hit with a surprise and a dissatisfied premium IOL patient. Now, coming to very shortly to the formulas, they've come a long way as well. The first generation, the second generation, and the third generation, and today we are sitting on the fourth and the fifth generation formulas. Today, I think universally, most people do tend to rely more on the Barrett's Universal 2 or the Barrett's suite, and the Hill RBF formula, which has artificial intelligence, and a couple of new formulas like the Kane and the Super Ladders, which are still coming up. But this typically tells you how to choose between the formulas, and you'll see here that at the bottom, these formulas, the new formulas that we use today, have a huge range for the long eyes, for the average eyes, and for the short eyes. So these are the two formulas which I tend to use as well, the Barrett's and the Hill RBF, and they've given us great results. Hill RBF is artificial intelligence based. It's not a formula, and it does not depend on the ELP. And it also tells you when an eye is out of bounds, which means if it has unusual measurements, very long axial length with very short AC depth or similar, it will typically tell you that not to use these calculations and be on your guard. And it has now dramatically increased the range for long and short eyes, and with much more eyes included. And it's possible to aim for residual refractive errors. The Barrett suite is where it's integrated in almost all the new optical biometers, especially so with the IOLMaster 700, and which shows superior results to almost all the other formulas. And it does include posterior surface of the cornea is also included in the Barrett suite with the nomogram, and it includes 3 formulas: the Universal 2 for non-toric IOLs, the toric calculator, and the TrueK. And you can use the Barrett suite on most of these devices. But as Dr. Ramamurthy said, if you don't have an optical biometer, it's still available on the ASCRS and APSCRS sites. So the Barrett's 2 requires the axial length and the keratometry and the lens factor. Optional things are the AC depth and the wide to wide and the lens thickness and the design factor. Now, obviously, these 4 things on the right, they increase the accuracy of these formulas. So lens factor is derived from the SRKT constant. The design factor it influences the IOL calculation specifically, and it is IOL specific. And without the DF calculation is possible for IOLs, but it is less precise. Without the wide to wide, AC depth and the lens thickness, the calculation obviously will not be as precise as you can get. So to increase accuracy, if you are using all these things into the formula, it obviously will give you better results. So I will not go into the details of how it does this, but it has the option of utilizing all these 5 variables, which you can see at the bottom, and as I've just discussed. So I think it goes a long way in giving you excellent results. And the performance has been proven to be great. And when it compares to the other formulas, I'll just show you how it has been shown to be much, much more accurate when used with optical biometers, and specifically so with the IOLMaster 700. The toric calculator by Barrett has done a great job. We've done away with most of the other company-based formulas, the calculators which we were using before. It incorporates for all the formulas and has inbuilt nomogram for posterior corneal astigmatism. So you don't need to make any of the adjustments, and you don't need to use the Baylor's nomogram, and it does a great job. And I've shifted to this almost for the last 5 years. I don't use anything else. So please ensure that you are using one of these formulas or a company-based formulas, which also incorporate the Barrett's toric calculator as well. Post laser vision correction, I think again there's a huge leap. Today the Barrett's TrueK is what I trust a lot, and it is based on the Barrett's Universal 2, but it takes into measurement, it gives you the options of choosing for post LASIK, hyperopic LASIK, and PRK. And it again has given great results. But I also use the Ascaris calculator for all my patients. Here you can feed in data from various devices, including the Pentacam and the OCT, whatever you have. You don't have to feed in all of them, but whatever you have, you can feed those, and it will give you the different formulas, 5 or 6. This is again free of cost, available on the ASRS site. And you can see here that I would choose the highest formula power, which was being picked up by most of these formulas, and it really helps in using this. And some of these post-refractive surgery patients, I do use the EKR report on the Pentacam as well. So I think trying to finish off, the TK formulas which are there on the IOLMaster 700 have made life more easy, because they can also pick up, they can be useful in eyes, corneas which have been dealt with before, which are not virgin corneas. And that's where they play a big role, because they actually measure the posterior corneal surface. And the new formulas by Barrett's, which are for TK, can be used. I'm not sure, I'm not using this, so I'll leave it for discussion whether these are going to be there. Finally, we should always do an outcomes analysis, otherwise we will not know what we are doing. So it's very important. These refractive form must look at your refractive outcomes, otherwise you will not know what you're doing, and you'll keep using the formulas, but you will not get anywhere. So as you can see here, these formulas are all good. the ray tracing, the Barrett's Universal and Hill, they all give about 90% accuracy for plus minus 0.5. And again, another comparison of the same outcomes. And for us, we also do post-op evaluations for our patients for toric placements. This is a very good device on the iTrace. Again, no financial interest, but I love using this. It tells you whether your toric is sitting in place and whether you need to rotate it. And it's great to check all your patients post-op for the access of implantation as well. And if you have a dissatisfied trifocal patient or a multifocal patient, you can look for other reasons for dissatisfaction, whether there's a decentered lens or another reason for that. So to summarize, I think trifocal IOLs and similar lenses have come a long way, and I think I use a fair number. I've got good numbers with these Zeiss 80 Lisa trifocal and the toric. Have been very happy. Patients have been very satisfied. So accurate biometry is, of course, the mainstay besides all the other things that I spoke about. And other diagnostic devices also help in improving your overall management and results. Attention to details and talking to the patient and understanding the patient needs is very, very important for a satisfactory outcome. And I think outcomes analysis is also very important to keep improving yourself. And with that, I'll stop sharing. Thank you.